Decoded.
Welcome, everyone, to Book Decoded. Today, we're cracking open a really fascinating collection of essays called Age of Doubt.
Yeah, it's quite the read.
It really is. Think of it as maybe your shortcut to understanding why trust feels like it's, doing a disappearing act in so many parts of our lives. From the news we read to, well, who's in charge? You actually sent this our way. Folks were curious about making sense of it all, and we're excited to explore the big ideas together.
That's right. And this isn't just a list of problems. It's more about digging into why this is happening and maybe spotting some potential paths forward.
Okay.
We'll be looking at, everything from social media's role to why having strong ethical foundations really matters for keeping society running smoothly.
Right. Okay, so the book kicks off talking about trust as this fraying golden thread holding everything together. Michelle Groton apparently calls it that for democracy.
Yes, that's the term she uses. And the essays really get into why it feels like it's, coming apart at the seams.
So it's fundamental then.
Absolutely. The book argues trust isn't just like a nice feeling, it's the bedrock. How we connect, our shared values, our faith in institutions, even agreeing on basic reality. Maria Ressa makes a really powerful point that without that trust, we kind of lose that shared understanding.
Which makes tackling big problems almost impossible.
Exactly. Collective action needs that shared reality.
And it's not just a feeling, is it? I saw the book points to a 2024 Edelman survey. Pretty stark number.
Very stark. Almost 2/3 of people globally believe governments, businesses, and journalists are intentionally misleading them.
Wow, 2/3 intentionally misleading. That's huge.
It is. And there's other data too, like Roy Morgan research in Australia finding real distrust in the economic system.
Why is that?
Well, the feeling seems to be that companies are just prioritizing profits, over the fact that individuals are struggling with rising living costs.
Creates a real gap.
A huge gap. And it breeds that distrust. So it's not just that people distrust, it's the scale and the feeling of being deliberately misled.
Yeah, that intentionality is key. And here's something I found really interesting. The book suggests this isn't just accidental. It talks about us almost forgetting the original purpose of our institutions.
That's a core argument, forgetting. And that a lot of the hypocrisy we see isn't necessarily malicious calculation, but maybe just a lack of thought.
Like neglecting the foundations.
Precisely. The analogy they use is institutions as these grand buildings, but the foundations, the core purposes and values, they've been neglected over time.
And that weakens the whole structure.
Exactly, leading to the kind of distrust we're talking about.
They use the market as an example, right? Meant for common good, honest exchange.
But the ethical rules, don't lie, don't cheat. Sometimes they get treated as optional extras.
Right.
Even Adam Smith, often seen as the father of capitalism, understood the market needs a solid ethical base to function properly. When that's ignored, skepticism towards free trade, banks, corporations, it's not surprising, is it?
No, not at all. The book then zooms in on Australia. Huge potential resources, energy, culture.
All of that, yes. But alongside it, this feeling of insecurity, geopolitics, economic changes, hitting jobs, it makes reform hard.
So potential is one thing,
But ultimately, the book argues it hinges on the quality of the ethical infrastructure and the trust that comes with it. That's what will determine the future.
It's not all doom and gloom, though. There's a hopeful note.
There is, yeah. A suggestion that this moment, this age of doubt, could actually be a unique opportunity, a chance to really rethink the foundations.
Like, why do we have parliaments? What's the point of universities' markets?
Exactly. And even if the answers end up being similar to the past, the act of consciously choosing them again, reinvesting in those purposes, that could breathe new life into them, make them stronger against corruption.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Now, the book brings in Plato's cave to talk about subjective truth. Can you sort of unpack that for us?
Sure. Plato's cave is a classic allegory. Imagine people chained in a cave, only seeing shadows on a wall. They think the shadows are reality.
Because that's all they know.
Right. And Dr. Dan Feurigel uses this to explain how we're all kind of in our own caves, seeing reality based on limited info.
Yeah.
Naturally, we end up with different views. Makes finding absolute truth really tricky.
Like my red versus your red.
Exactly like that. And our brains actually help create this. When faced with competing information, the brain has to sort of settle on one coherent interpretation. It blocks out the others to give us a stable view.
And language itself isn't neutral, is it? Nick Enfield's point.
No, not at all. The very words we choose frame things, direct attention, so truly neutral speech. Probably impossible.
So truth is more than just my perception.
It has to be. It includes others' views, their descriptions. The danger is when false information comes in and distorts that collective view, and then our actions.
And our personal experiences, our identities, they act like lenses.
Definitely. The book gives examples like a strong national identity coloring how you see a rugby referee, or being a mother shaping other interpretations.
Right.
These lenses, combined with language, it makes assessing truth subjectively really complex.
Which leads to this idea of needing cognitive literacy. What does that mean exactly?
It's basically understanding our own mental limits, our biases, and how language itself isn't neutral.
So being aware of our own cave.
Yeah, and actively seeking truth, being willing to be wrong, questioning our own beliefs. Self-correction is presented as a really high value.
It's sobering, though, realizing we've had warnings about this stuff for a while, not just climate change.
The parallel is striking. Experts, national security, academics, journalists, they've been warning about the information ecosystem crisis for, over half a century. McLuhan predicted a guerrilla information war back in 1970.
Wow. And the tech that seemed so promising, like for the Arab Spring.
It's turned out to be a double-edged sword, hasn't it? Fueling positive movements, but also spreading awful stuff like QAnon and racist conspiracies.
There's a journalist's account in there, right? About fighting disinformation being like whack-a-mole.
Yes, just frustrating, polarizing, never-ending. And sadly, even huge events like January 6th haven't been enough to shift some firmly held beliefs.
The book suggests learning from formers, people who've left extremist groups.
Yeah, the idea is that understanding their journey might help us communicate better across divides. Empathy is key. There's even an anecdote about a respectful chat with flat earthers. Shows engagement is possible.
Then there's this tactic. Maximalist disinformation. Sounds ominous.
It is. The goal isn't even to convince you of one lie. It's just to flood the zone with so many competing narratives that everything becomes chaos and people just disengage, give up trying to find truth.
And it's not just shadowy groups, right? The Israeli government example is mentioned.
That's a concerning development. State-sponsored disinformation against allies. It involved creating fake social media accounts targeting U.S. politicians.
Even if it wasn't super sophisticated.
Right, which maybe makes it more worrying in a way, how easy it seems to be.
And meanwhile, the people trying to fight this, researchers, fact-checkers, they're facing hurdles.
Yeah, social media platforms are actually reducing access to data, like Twitter's API changes or Meta getting rid of CrowdTangle.
Just when AI is making disinformation easier to produce.
Exactly. It's a huge challenge. The efforts are immense, but the tools are being limited just as the threat is accelerating.
We feel this polarization in daily life too, don't we? The hostile arguments, the bubbles.
The personal stories in the book really hit home the difficult dinner party, the friend cutting ties over COVID views. It reflects what many people are experiencing.
Even the UN Secretary General talks about a global trust deficit disorder.
Antonio Guterres, yeah. He paints a grim picture. Closing civic spaces, free expression in free fall, dissent silence, social media supercharging polarization, people losing faith.
And this distrust extends even to facts. People relying on gut feeling.
It's a major concern. ASIO in Australia is seeing politically motivated violence as a top threat alongside espionage.
Yeah.
That's serious.
Science taking hits too, especially during COVID.
Yes, and when you have figures like Donald Trump saying his gut tells him more than experts' brains, it captures a sentiment where personal feeling outweighs evidence for many.
The Reuters Institute report confirms people are moving to less trustworthy private spaces online too.
Because they distrust mainstream news and politics. It's a worrying cycle.
And that Yale study, social media rewarding sharing regardless of accuracy.
It's disturbing. The drive for likes and comments can apparently override the impulse to check if something's true for habitual sharers. Gizem Silan points out they prioritize attention over accuracy.
So the path forward requires conscious effort, building a different kind of society.
That's the argument. We need healthy skepticism, sure, but also debate aimed at societal benefit, not just winning. We have to agree on some basic facts, find common ground.
And get out of our echo chambers.
Crucial. Actively seek out challenging views, try to empathize. We need a vibrant civic space, room for nuance, built on honesty. And education is key critical thinking, civil exchange.
Citizens' assemblies are mentioned as one possible tool.
Yes, bringing informed citizens together to discuss issues and advise government. Examples from Belgium, Canada, Iceland show it can work.
A.C. Grayling noted it can change minds, foster understanding.
It can. The idea of even developing online citizens' assemblies is floated, trying to recapture that early potential of the internet for constructive debate.
And what about institutions themselves? Media, government.
Big responsibility there. Transparency, inclusivity, honesty about bias, admitting mistakes, listening to everyone. Otherwise, as the book asks, what's the point of media exposing wrongdoing if nobody believes them?
Guterres calls for a new social contract.
Yeah, investing in rebuilding trust, strengthening checks and balances, tackling inequality, corruption, boosting education, setting digital guardrails, human rights. It's a big list.
Economic security seems tied into this too. ANU poll data
Shows a clear link. Lower economic satisfaction often means lower trust in democracy. Biddle's research confirms this connection between inequality and trust.
a warning for politicians.
Definitely. Social policies that lift people up are vital for trust. And using negativity for short-term gain just damages trust long-term.
Journalism's role is evolving too, right? Objectivity is still central,
But social media and hyperpolarization make it tough. Objective journalists get harassed by partisan actors.
a chilling effect.
Potentially, yes. While social media gives citizens a voice, it also enables these pile-ons. The book stresses journalists must prioritize truth over bias, serving the majority who aren't hardcore partisans.
Though trust in media generally is low.
Very low, especially social media, according to that ANU data. Less than 2% completely trust traditional news, and even less for social media, which maybe gives government some backing for regulation.
And trust in science is under the microscope as well.
Digital tech amplifies all information, making it hard to sort evidence-based stuff from noise. Even mainstream sources sometimes get it wrong.
Peer review is important here.
Hugely, it's a validation mechanism. The shift to digital publishing has created access issues, though, with paywalls.
Australia's chief scientist has a proposal.
A public model, a central digital library for research access. The idea is it could improve social cohesion and publishers' social license.
What about religion and trust? It seems complex.
The data shows correlations. In Australia, identifying as no religion often links with no trust in religious institutions. Regular attendance correlates with lower distrust, never attending with higher distrust.
And confidence has dropped overall.
Between 2014 and 2018, yes, linked partly to more people never attending.
Is there a broader point about shared values beyond just individual belief?
The idea is that accepting something beyond ourselves, even just a societal agreement, establishes ideals and boundaries, which can be a foundation for trust. It encourages humility, maybe shifts us from suspicion towards trust.
Even policing, traditionally high trust in Australia, faces scrutiny.
Yeah, despite understanding it's a tough job, constant scrutiny via cameras plus opinionated media coverage can erode trust. Representation matters too, forces reflecting the community. Militarization can undermine that.
Rural policing often builds more trust.
Because it's more embedded, less transactional than in cities. Ultimately, police need to actively manage their reputation through professional conduct.
I like the indigenous perspective from Yelme Yunupinga, the poison metaphor.
It's powerful. For the Yulu, trust is built by watching actions, listening, observing how people treat others. The Guru-to kinship system is a foundational truth for resolving disputes.
Her view on politicians was nuanced.
Trust those who help, but lack of follow-through means no trust. She also sees potential in the national anthem as representing shared trust and stresses language connection for identity and belonging.
Switching back to news media, what do audiences want for trust?
High standards, transparency, fairness, lack of bias. That's what Reuters Institute research shows. Initiatives like the Trust Project are trying to address this.
But AI deepfakes are a new threat.
A huge one for visual information, though verification tech might help counter it.
There's this idea of a past golden age of journalism. Is that accurate?
The book questions that nostalgia. Fact-checking has risen, but it has limits reach, potential to inflate problems. Sylvia Waysboard argues trust is also about what people do with news.
The New Yorker's fact-checking is held up as a model.
It's incredibly rigorous. Verifying everything, contacting everyone mentioned. When they do make an error, the subscriber reaction shows just how much trust is placed in them. Trust is fragile.
Can constructive journalism help rebuild trust in democracy?
Ulrich Hagerup argues the industry needs self-criticism. News avoidance is rising because people feel overwhelmed or distrustful.
Denmark's TV2 shifted debate formats.
From confrontation to encouraging critical thinking, empathy. And Norway's NRK found constructive journalism boosted readership, engagement, satisfaction. Publishers see solutions journalism as key.
What about online public spaces? They're often toxic.
Humans want to gather and exchange ideas, and now that's mostly online. But comment sections get shut down, people leave platforms like X, regulation attempts haven't worked well.
So projects like New Public.
Yeah, partnering with public broadcasters like CBC, ZDF, trying to create safer online spaces without the usual revenue or negative engagement drivers. They're developing tools like comment slider, perspective stripes.
But public service media itself is under threat.
Increasingly, funding cuts, political interference, disinformation campaigns. Their independence is crucial for trust, but it's being challenged globally. France, Hungary, Canada, UK.
And declining press freedom affects everyone.
Absolutely. SLAPPs, safety issues, fake news laws. It hits all media. Public media need to lean into their values, be transparent, engage audiences, promote media literacy to survive and maintain trust.
Let's talk corporates. Trust there is very visible, isn't it?
Essential for everyday life, online shopping, travel. Distrust isn't just lack of trust. It's fear, betrayal, often triggered by feeling foolish or by scandals.
There's a trajectory of distrust.
Doubt, suspicion, fear, rejection, kind of like grief, but focused on material risk. Roy Morgan data tracks trust versus distrust across the economy.
Moral blindness in leaders.
Prioritizing profit over ethics, leading to compromises, then distrust. Stories shape perceptions massively. Think of the GFC narrative.
Examples of building and losing trust.
Toyota built it on reliability, sustainability. Volkswagen lost it with Dieselgate, Medibank, and Facebook with data breaches. Social media spreads distrust fast.
Leaders have personal responsibility.
Hugely. Some, like Paul Polman at Unilever, prioritize social responsibility. The 7-Eleven Australia underpayment scandal is another case study.
The CEO reflected on rebuilding trust.
Angus Kinnear, yes, transparency, taking responsibility, showing commitment to fixing the problem, even working anonymously in stores to understand. They focused on character and recruitment, recognized fault was widespread.
There's a link to broader societal shifts, too. Liberty versus security.
Sociologist Carl Polanyi's idea. Maybe we've swung too far towards individual liberty, affecting systemic trust. As societies get wealthier, moral preferences shift towards equity, sustainability, impacting trust in institutions.
And body language. Can that really build trust? The elusive obvious.
Louise Mahler argues yes. Understanding our physical presence, body, voice. Ancient thinkers knew this gravitas, but it starts with being a good person, as Quintilian said.
So unlearning blockages.
In posture, breath, gestures, voice. That builds confidence, which projects trust. Even a simple handshake matters, especially post-COVID. Eye contact, too, in Western cultures, but not staring.
Eye control.
Directing your gaze purposefully, softly. It directs attention, builds connection.
Okay, finally, AI. Beyond the killer robots idea.
Tobias Feakin highlights the more mundane, insidious reality. Think E.M. Forster's The Machine Stops from 1909. Trust in science is already down, and AI feeds into this.
Oh.
Collapsing media models, shorter attention spans, algorithms pushing clickbait and misinformation. AI supercharges it. Distinguishing real from synthetic gets harder. Cambridge Analytica was a wake-up call.
Elections are vulnerable.
Traditional influence laws struggle online. Whoever has the best algorithms and lies can have an edge. AI surveillance, like China's Skynet, also destroys trust.
Any positive potential.
Tech can increase transparency, like WikiLeaks. And things like federated learning or edge AI might strengthen digital privacy.
What about bots specifically?
Yeah.
Timothy Graham's chapter.
It uses Professor Terry Hughes's experience being swamped by AI bots as an example. They're cheap to make now with LLMs like ChatGPT, hard to detect, mass-produced content, erodes authenticity.
Is it just a political threat?
That's the focus, maybe an informational moral panic. Bot is used as an insult now. It links to the post-truth condition emotion over facts. Bots thrive where trust in media and politicians is low.
So bots are part of the system, not outside invaders.
That's Harson's view, maybe.
Yeah.
Deception in politics isn't new. Recognizing that politicians themselves are major spreaders of misinformation changes how we should approach the bot problem.
And conspiracies. Kaz Ross writes about them. Fact-checking doesn't work.
Often not. Theorists reject those sources. They aren't necessarily uneducated, often just worried. And sometimes facts are incomplete, making conspiracies plausible.
So we rely on trust in experts.
Which is harder now with deepfakes. Lack of transparency, like the Fukushima salt panic example, breeds conspiracies. Theorists often see themselves as heroic truth seekers.
It provides community.
A tribe, yes, like anti-COVID groups. Some figures profit from it too. It can become a thinking template applied everywhere. Even in democracies with free media, distrust allows conspiracies to flourish. More info might help, but won't stop it entirely.
Julia Baird's Q&A wraps things up. Living with uncertainty.
She says doubt is good for accountability, but unreasonable distrust is paralyzing. Journalists need transparency. Misinformation rises alongside loneliness community is vital.
Depp Heard case, as an example.
Shows how social media narratives diverge from reality, promote hate. Important principles like access to info get tested even with imperfect people, like Assange. Predicting or controlling misinformation is hard.
So rely on experts and weight of evidence.
Yes, trained experts, multiple studies. Media needs to do this too. Looking outwards, finding awe and wonder helps build resilience. Attacks on science, like on Fauci, are deeply concerning. We need to ask who funds research casting doubt.
Wow, okay, that was a lot to unpack from Age of Doubt. Feels like we've only scratched the surface, really.
It's incredibly complex, isn't it? Trust is definitely facing some serious headwinds, but it's also clear there are thoughtful people grappling with this from all angles.
Absolutely. What really stands out for me is just how interconnected everything is.
Totally. From, like, how our brains work, to the ethics of our institutions, to technology's impact. It's all linked. Understanding those dynamics, well, that's got to be the first step, right?
For you, our curious listener, we really hope this exploration has maybe brought some clarity, perhaps a few aha moments. The book's got way more perspectives, potential solutions. Definitely worth exploring further if this sparked your interest.
And maybe just something to reflect on. In this absolute flood of information we live in, maybe actively thinking about where you place your trust and asking yourself why. Maybe that's the most powerful tool we actually have.
That's a great final thought. Thanks for joining us on Book Decoded. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep seeking truth.
Indeed. Keep asking why.